8. Captain Dumont had always imagined heaven as a place of light, a place where darkness could never invade. He would have never thought that heaven could be a realm where shadow preserved, and even the light of dawn could mean death. Of course, heaven to him was any place where he could be with Atana. He had left her some hours before, but still, she had his heart and mind. Kentrell had only slept lightly since, yet he felt refreshed, more alive than ever in his entire life. He peered out the window of the room given to him to see the city still alive with torches, although a part of him yearned for some bit of daylight, simply in order to mark the passage of time. The captain knew that could not be. Until the people of Ure could safely stand in the sun, then the shadow had to remain fixed over the kingdom. Atana felt certain that her father could remedy the situation now that they had some stability on the mortal plane. However, to accomplish anything, he first had to be free, and only through Quoth Sin could that be possible. Never before had Kentrell looked to the Vajari for any true magical assistance. He had desired some, yes, during the battle with the demon cat, but had not actually expected much. Now he prayed Sin would be proving himself the master that he claimed to be. Control. Gore stood at the doorway to his door chamber, the massive fighter at attention. Kentrell blinked, recalling that each morning he generally received a status report from his second. Of course, with their work for Sin seemingly at an end, the captain had put all such tasks from his mind. Only Khan's daughter concerned him now. Yes, Gorst? 3 missing, Kentrell. Missing? 7 came back. He grinned. Drunk. 3 didn't. Captain Dumont shrugged. Not all surprising, all things considered. Actually, I'm amazed so many returned. Want me to watch for them? Not unless they go missing for a couple days. We're all being treated like kings here, Gorst. They're just reveling in it, that's all. The black-maned fighter started to turn away, then commented, She's prettier than on the brooch, Kentrell. I know. Gorst, any word from Sin on his efforts? If any of them had kept track on the Vajari's work, it would have had to have been the large mercenary. The magic man thinks he's got something. That pleased Kentrell. Good. Where can I find him? With the books. When it became clear that his captain did not understand, Gorst grunted. I'll show you. Kentrell followed him through a maze of halls until they came to what surely had to be the largest collections of writings the mercenary had either ever heard of or seen. While he could read and write after a fashion, not something most of his men could do, Kentrell could not imagine himself putting together so many words. Moreover, the words in these tomes and scrolls not only had meaning, but power. These words had magic. The shelves rose high, each filled with leather-bound volumes or tightly sealed parchments. No direct system of order could be seen, but as a military man, Captain Dumont assumed there had to be one. Well-worn ladders stood before every other set of shelves, and tables with stools had been set aside for those making use of Ure's literary treasures. As a mercenary, Kentrell could also appreciate the value of the many writings stored in the vast chamber. Sorcerers like Quoth Sin often paid hefty prices for such books, and he himself had retrieved 1 or 2 for good pay. Still, at the moment, all Kentrell saw in the library was the means by which Atana could be free. No, he saw something else besides. Seated in the midst of the lamp-lit chamber, quoth Sin, huddled over books and sheets, scribbling notes with a quill and keeping his index finger on one of the pages of one particularly massive tome. The Vizier did not look up as Kentrell neared. Under his breath, Sin muttered incomprehensible things, and the sorcerer had a look upon his wrinkled features that caused the hardened fighter to pause. He had seen the diminutive Vizier obsessed before, but now Sin resembled a man gone completely mad. His eyes never blinked as he worked, and his gaze went only from the book to the sheet upon which he wrote and back again. A grin that the captain had only seen on corpses stretched far across the slight figure's face, giving Sin a very unsettling expression. Kentrell cleared his throat. The stooped figure did not look up, instead scrawling new notes over the already heavily covered parchment. Sin? With what seemed an almost monumental struggle, the avian face turned his way. "What is it, Dumont?" The venom with which the Vizier spoke each syllable left both Kentrell and Gorst taken aback. The captain realized that his hand had slipped to the hilt of his sword, and he quickly removed it before Sin could take any further umbrage. "I came to see how you were progressing with Lord Khan in the cities." "I could be progressing much faster without constant and innate eruptions by the likes of you, cretin," quoth Sin, slammed his fist on the table, sending ink spreading across the bottom of the parchment and over his hand. He seemed not to notice what he had done, more concerned with spitting barbed words at those before him. "You come clawing and squeaking and questioning, all of you, when I sit here on the verge of discovery. Can your feeble minds not comprehend the magnitude of what I struggle toward?" Releasing the quill, the ink-stained hand reached for the sorcerer's staff. Malice filled Sin's eyes. Kentrell backed up more, nearly colliding with Gorst. "Easy there, Sin. Are you insane?" Knuckles white, the Vizier clutched the staff. His silver-gray eyes darted from the two men to the rune-covered rod and back again. For a few dangerous seconds, a struggle between choices clearly unfolded, and then at last Sin put the staff to the side and with much effort turned back to his task. Without looking at the pair, he whispered, "You had better leave." "Sin, I think you need some rest. And when was the last time you ate any?" Both of the spellcaster's bony hands tightened. Eyes still downcast, he said again, "You had better leave." Gorst took Kentrell by the shoulder, and the two backed out of the library. They said nothing until several steps down the corridor, where they hoped Sin could not hear them. "Was he like that the last time you saw him?" Captain Dumont interrogated a second. "No. Not so bad anyways, Kentrell. I knew the old little mage was tempered, but Sin nearly tried to kill us. You know that, don't you?" The giant gave him a brooding look. "I know. I should go have a talk with Juris Khan. It won't do anyone any good if old Sin goes violently mad. He might try to hurt someone." "Maybe he just needs a nap." Kentrell grimaced. "Oh, well, if anyone could make him do it, it'd have to be Khan. You saw how much he listened to me." "You want me to keep an eye on him?" Gorst asked. "Only if you keep your distance. Don't do it immediately, though. Let him get lost in his work for an hour or two first. That might be better." From somewhere within the palace, a flute began to play. Suddenly, Kentrell lost all interest in the diminutive Jerai's antics. He knew of only one person in Consanctum who played the flute. Maybe if I talk to Otana first, she can better explain it to her father. The captain could not help saying, that'd probably be best course of action for me. The grin returned to Gorst's broad face. Probably be. Kentrell felt his face flush. He turned to go, but he could not help adding at last, just be careful, Gorst. The grin remained. You too. The flute playing continued, the same haunting melody that he had heard the first time. Captain Newmont followed the music through numerous winding halls that made him feel as if he were repeating his journey to the library. At last, Kentrell came not to a balcony or one of the vast chambers, but rather to an open gate leading to, of all things, a vast inner courtyard open to the sky. A courtyard doubling as an extensive garden. Garden, perhaps understated severely the sight. A miniature forest, more a jungle, spread out before the veteran soldier. Exotic trees and plants that seemed like none Kentrell had ever encountered, not even on the trek to this distant part of Kyrgyzstan, grew tall and strong. Dark greens, vivid crimsons, bright yellows, and fiery oranges decorated the tableau in an arresting fashion. There were hanging vine plants and monstrous flowers, some of the latter larger than his head. One could literally become lost within a garden such as this, and of that, Kentrell had no doubt. And near the path leading into it, Atana, seated on a stone bench, played her flute. In a billowing silky dress with a long thin skirt somehow emphasized, rather than hid her slim but curved form. Her long red tresses hung down over her left shoulder of her face, reaching almost to the most attractive décolletage. She did not notice him at first, but when he started toward her, captivated by the sight of her playing, Atana suddenly looked up. Her eyes held such an intensity that they had left Kentrell at a loss for how to proceed. Atana, however, took control of the situation by putting down her flute and coming to him. Kentrell! I hope you slept well. Very much. You play beautifully, Atana. She gave him a most demure look. I think not. But my father shares your opinion. Not certain what to say yet, the captain glanced past her at the garden. One never knows what to expect here. Do you like it? It is one of my favorite places. I've spent most of my life here and much of our exile too. It's unique. Atana pulled him toward it. You must have a closer look. Despite the fanciful colors of the flowers and some of the plants, the garden had a rather foreboding look that Kentrell did not truly notice until his hostess had led him up to the path running through it. Suddenly, the beauty and wonder of it gave way to an uneasiness. Now it reminded him more of the jungle through which he and his men had fought. The same jungle that had claimed 4 of his party. What's the matter? Juris Khan's daughter asked. Nothing. He steeled himself for the walk through. This was not the same stark jungle. This was simply a fanciful garden, built for the Lord of the Realm. What danger could possibly exist within such a confined space? I love it here, she murmured. It takes me away. Takes me away from the world from which I'm trapped. Lets me imagine I'm in a far, far away land, about to meet this handsome stranger. Kentrell started to say something, but he decided he could not trust his tongue not to tie itself up. He could scarcely believe himself. Never in his life had any woman left him feeling so befuddled. Broad leaf plants brushed their shoulders, and occasional vines, seeming to drop out of nowhere, dingled near their heads. The path at their feet had been made to seem quite natural, a covering of soft dirt and sand over what seemed solid stone. With each step, though, it grew darker and darker, until at last he could see neither the entrance through which they had come, nor the exit far ahead. Now he truly felt as if he had stepped back into the jungle. His companion noticed this sudden anxiety. "You're shivering." "It's nothing, my lady." "You're supposed to call me Atana," she responded in mock anger. "Or did this mean so little to you?" She leaned forward and kissed him. His anxieties concerning his surroundings vanished in an instant. Kentrell wrapped his arms around her and returned her passion. Then he felt something on his neck, a slow but steady movement, like that of a worm or a caterpillar. Yet whatever crawled upon his skin did so with the appendages sharp as needles. Unable to withstand it, Captain Umar pushed the Tana back and quickly reached for the creature. However, as his hand neared, the thing suddenly pulled away, as if perhaps falling off. "What was it?" Atana cautiously asked. "Something landed on me. It felt as if it walked across my neck with tiny swords at each of its legs." Even in the darkness, he could make out her face well enough. Atana frowned in consideration, but seemed to have no knowledge to offer. "Shall we leave?" The pain had faded, and Kentrell had no desire to look cowardly and foolish in front of her, especially over some insect. "No, let's go on as we have." They moved on a few paces, stopping again to kiss. Atana then buried her head in his chest, saying, "Father still hopes to complete the journey to heaven." He stiffened. "Is that still possible?" "So he believes. I pray he's wrong." "But why?" She put her hand on his cheek. Because I find the mortal world more to my liking." "Can you talk him out of it?" With the gentle caresses of her hand against his skin helped Kentrell relax again. "It would help if we knew that we stood an easier and safer chance of making our tentative hold on the mortal's plane a permanent one. If we could convince him that, for the sake of all, we'd be better off once more among men, then I feel he'd acquiesce. After all, the threat we fled no longer exists." She wanted to stay, and he wanted her to stay. Yet Juris Khan wished to at last to achieve the holy goal offered to him during those dark years of terror. Not surprising, but certainly not wanted to be either here. Maybe Sin would know. Kentrell started before recalling the possession the Vajra seemed under. He did not want to try to seek with Sin, not until the sorcerer had been persuaded to rest and eat properly. Maybe he could convince Father. Her tongue spoke openly of hope. The old one seems skilled, if lacking in common courtesy. Do you think he could do it? I don't. The captain paused. An idea began to formulate, one that would possibly play on Old Sin's personality. Atana appeared to sense his shifting mood. You've thought of something, haven't you? You've thought of something. A possible idea. If Sin remains constant, it could work to your benefit. I need to try to think about it a little longer, and it would be good if I just didn't talk to him just now. I have no intention of parting with you just yet, anyways, the young woman responded. Not at the moment. Atana stepped up and kissed him again. Feeling much better about matters, Captain Dumont responded in kind. If the Vajira could be persuaded to see his way, then Sin in turn would likely persuade Khan. All Kentrell had to do was play on the spellcaster's greed. He let out a gasp of pain. Ah! Something dug at his back, as if trying to reach all the way into his heart. He twisted around, felt what seemed one of the vines, and swiftly grabbed at it. What felt like 1,000 pins sank into his fingers and palm. Kentrell! Despite his agony, the mercenary kept his hold, then tugged with all of his might. A peculiar and not at all human squeal coursed through the vine garden. The entire vine tumbled to the path. A dark, sinewy form, more than 3 times the length of a man. Throwing down the end, Kentrell clutched the hand that had held the plant with his other. It felt as if he had stuck the throbbing appendage into an open fire. Tana! What? I have no idea! Your hand! Give it to me! Your hand! Her soft fingers lightly touched his own. The pain receded. Atana whispered something, then leaned down and let her lips lightly touch his palm. Fearful of suffering whatever plant poison had gotten him, the captain tried to pull away. With surprising strength, however, Juris Khan's daughter held on. Please, Kentrell, rest easy. I know what I'm about. Seemed that she did, for the more that she worked at his injury, the less and less it hurt him. Before long, he could even flex the fingers without so much as feeling a twinge. What did you do? He finally asked. I am my father's daughter, was her reply. I'm the daughter of the most revered Juris Khan, meaning that she shared some of his wondrous skills. Caught up in her glory, he had forgotten that she had such talents. Now that Atana had dealt with his injury, he recalled what attacked him in the first place. Squinting, Kentrell searched the dark path for the end of the vine. His companion found it first. Were you looking for this? Be careful! But she looked unaffected by the vile plant. This could not be what stung you. This is only a Hakara vine. In some parts of the world, they eat the fleshy bottom part. It has much juice and is claimed to be healthy. This is spiny thing? He took it from her, only to find it smooth and soft, save for a few tiny bumps. He must have been bitten by an insect of some sort. Probably the same one that bothered you before, Atana suggested. Sometimes some of the jungle insects used to make their way here. Despite how the city and mountain air causes it to be cooler more than they like. An insect in Ure. And why not? You and your friends are here. Why not an insect that happened to be near? The jungle isn't that far from the edge of our kingdom. Her words made sense, but did not completely mollify him. He looked around the darkened garden, finally saying, "Let's move on." Only when the first glimmer of light at the other end materialized did Kentrell feel any calmer. As they exited, he looked back with barely concealed distaste. Atana and the others in Ure might find such a grove peaceful and beautiful. To the soldier, it now seemed more in tune with the nightmarish curse Grigus Matzi had wrought. Had the timeless exile in limbo somehow changed the plants in ways Khan's daughter did not notice? Now that we've got better light, Atana suddenly said, "Let me see your hand again." Turned it over for both of them to study, and saw little more than a few healing welts. Kentrell could scarcely believe it, having felt that his entire hand should be a bloody perforated mess. Running her finger over the remaining marks, the young woman commented, "In a short time, these too will vanish." "It's amazing. Thank you." He had witnessed magic before, but never had it been performed on him. Kentrell felt certain that if Atana had not used her skills, he would have been much worse at the moment. "It's only a small thing, and I feel bad that you suffered because of me. If I hadn't invited you to walk with me..." "Such things happen. Don't blame yourself." She looked up at him with imploring eyes. "Will you still talk to Master Sin about trying to get Father to change his mind?" "Of course I will. How could Atana think otherwise? The captain did as much for himself as he did for her. Old Sin's consistent. I'll explain the matter to his liking. He'll be certain to do what he can to make Lord Khan see it right, too." "I hope so." She kissed him again. "I'm thinking of my father. I must go to him now. Since he cannot move from the chair, I play for him to ease his burdens. Perhaps I can make a mild suggestion already. He's always more agreeable after my music." With one final kiss, Atana left him. Her slim form disappeared into the garden. Kentrell watched her vanish. But although the garden would have likewise been the appropriate route for him, the mercenary did not enter. Instead, he looked around the perimeter, keeping a cautious distance. By the time Kentrell reached where Khan's daughter would have been playing, both she and the flute had long left. Alone, Captain Dumont took one last measured look at the unsettling grove. At first glance, this seemed no more unusual than any patch of jungle or forest, and as a place specifically sculpted by some master gardener, it should have presented an even less intimidating image than either of the former. Yet, the more he studied it, the more Kentrell felt that if he had entered it alone, it would have been much more difficult to come out. From behind him, someone cleared his throat. "Captain?" "Albert!" He hoped that the other mercenary had not noticed him jump ever so slightly. "What is it?" "Sorry to bother you, but a couple of us were wondering when we might get our reward from his lordship so we can get going home." "You're already tired of all the acclamation, Albert?" The plain-faced, white-haired fighter looked a bit more uncomfortable. Kentrell forgot that, despite his experience and skills, Albert was much younger than those in his company, that he often had been left in charge when Gorse could not be spared, had said much for his abilities. It's not that I didn't have as good a time as any captain, but a few of us just want to head back to Westmarch." He shrugged. Just feel a little more comfortable at home than here, sir. The last thing that Kentra wanted was to leave, but he could understand how the other fighters might feel. Gorse would probably stay. He had no family, no kin. The rest, though, had ties to Western kingdoms, even loved ones. That these men served as mercenaries as much had to do with feeding mouths as becoming rich. All thought of the garden fading. The captain patted Albert on the shoulder. I'll see what can be done about the lot of you going home. If I do, can I trust you to bring something back to the families of those lost? If I read our host right, one small sack should be enough to split among the survivors and leave them well off. Aye, Captain, you know I'll be honest. Kentrell had no doubt about that. He also knew with which the other men from the survivors could be cut from the similar cloth. No one joined Captain Dumont's company who did not first undergo thorough scrutiny. If Kentrell sent Albert home with Quine those left behind by Benjen, Hargo, and the others, it would reach them. Grateful, the young fighter saluted. He started to step away, then hesitated. Captain, 2 men still haven't come back from the city. I know. Gorse told me 3, actually. Simon dragged himself in a little while ago, but he said Jace was heading back hours before, and no one's seen sign of Breck. Having known far too many like the pair missing, Kentrell shrugged off Albert's concern. They'll pop up. You'll see. They won't want to miss their share, remember? Should I send someone out to look? Not now. No. The captain came a little more impatient. He needed some time to think about how best to phrase things that Sin would readily see his point of view. Kentrell had no more time to waste on drunken mercenaries gone astray. I told Gorse that if they don't show up in a couple days, maybe then. Hoping he had not sounded too uncaring, Captain Dumont patted Albor's shoulder again. Try to relax. Enjoy this. Believe me, Albor, it happens all too little for those like us. The jungle we crossed? Or that winter near the Gulf of Westmarch? That's our usual payoff. Albert gave him a plowboy smile, reminding Kentrell of the background of almost every low-paid mercenary ever born. I suppose I can take the food and women a little longer. That's the spirit, the older fighter proclaimed as he began guiding the other back down the hall. In his mind, Kentrell pictured Atana, his own reason for staying, perhaps forever. At least until he had talked to the Vajarian to persuading Jurus Khan no longer to seek the righteous path to heaven. The captain did not want to broach the subject of payment. It was not as if Albert and the others were not being rewarded in other ways. Besides, Kentrell thought, what harm could a few more days waiting do?